Bom dia, Munson here with a Good Morning Portugal show from expatsportugal.com. Look at this. California, Cape Town, Madeira, all in the house already. So good morning to you, Hank. Good morning to you, Sandra. Also in California. Hola, bom dia a todos. Taryn, a new name, I think, or I was going to call you irregular. That's most rude, isn't it? An infrequent visitor to the show, I think. And what's this? Goimura from, I think that might be Afrikaans, yeah? Sunny Cape Town this morning. Taryn, good morning to you. Bom dia, alegria, as we say here on the Good Morning Portugal show from Milda in Norway this morning. Yes, back to Madeira now. Catherine Nichols is over there. Hi, Catherine. Bon dia to you as well. And we have Jacqueline Merrybrand. Good morning. I think you know our guest already, Donna Jacqueline. Rizal Furtado is here as well. Bon dia, alegria from Zezimbra this morning. And it's okay. I think maybe that's my pronunciation. Okay, I gave it my best shot. Amelie is here as well. Amelie Gemanage. Hi from sunny Lyon in France as well. Incredible. Okay, good morning to you all and some new names. Let me bring onto the screen my guest this morning. It's great to have Craveiro here. Hi, Joyce. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm great. Thank you.
Bon dia, alegria to you.
Bon dia.
You're in the wonderful south of Portugal this morning in Lagos.
Yes, that's correct.
How is it down there this morning?
It's a little bit more overcast than what we're used to, but it's okay. It's nice and warm, and the sun is coming through, so it's okay.
It can always feel a little bit disappointing, I think, in the Algarve when there isn't a completely blue and brilliant sky, right? It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, we are spoiled.
This isn't what we signed up for. Now, you're here to talk to us about a wonderful project, Lar no Lar, and which came across the metaphorical desk, as it were. And I thought, what a lovely idea. And you're dealing, I mean, am I right in thinking that your main aim is to deal with the, what can only really be called an epidemic of loneliness and social isolation in many cultures and societies around the world? You're dealing with that directly here in Portugal.
Yes, that's correct. So what's actually happening, what we're doing is that this epidemic goes hand in hand with this wonderful thing that we're also encountering, which is this longevity, because we're living longer and longer. And because of that, we have a huge amount of population that are living longer. And because of that, there's no really resources or basically ways to support these people as they live their lives. And that's what I'm trying to do, is tap into that.
Yes, so we're victims of our own human ingenuity. By making ourselves live longer, we've created the new problem of how we support, look after each other. And actually, I mean, more than that, it's more than a survival thing, isn't it? It's about how we have great lives as well, presumably, which is under threat.
Absolutely.
You know, the dreaded isolation and loneliness. So it's one thing to recognize that as a thing, but then it's quite something else to do something about it. And that's what's so lovely about what you've done here. Is you've got on and done it. How did that begin? How did that process begin?
Oh God, okay. So the story goes, I was living in London and working away and enjoying my life. We're trying to, as best as I could, considering the weather. And
sorry about that.
Yeah, well, and my father was here in Portugal, and he was independent, and he was in his 80s, but he was quite independent still. But he was living on his own. And every time I came to visit, I noticed that he was getting more and more depressed. And even although he was independent, he just didn't have any zest for life. He didn't want to do anything. He was still active, and he had an extra room at home. And I used to think, God, I wish I could put somebody there just to live there with him and keep him company. And but then how do you do that? How do you find someone that you can trust to do it? And then his health went into decline, and I think also part of that was because he was on his own. There wasn't anyone around to notice little things that were changing. And so whenever I came back to visit, I noticed big changes. So he ended up being ill, and he had cancer, but it probably could have been diagnosed earlier if there had been someone else there keeping an eye on him. But before he went away, we hired services to help him out in the home. Yeah. And what they did was that they basically dropped off meals, ready-made meals. And with those ready-made meals, while he was being fed and he had access to food that was cooked, so he didn't have to worry about it, he lost part of his social life because he wasn't going out anymore to go cooking. So it was one thing fed into another. And then I was in London, and while I was dealing with this and flying back over quite frequently to see him, I came across these home sharing programs in London, and I thought that's exactly what I need for my dad.
Mm.
And so I ended up doing that, and I lived with a gentleman in London, and we became best mates. He was and is an amazing, now he's an amazing person. And it was really, really good because it made me go through this whole thing, and then seeing how our lives, both of our lives, improved so much with our interaction. It just made me really go, I have to do this in Portugal. I want to do this so that, because well, anyway, that's how the story started. I get a little bit emotional still talking about it, just because it's something that I really it became a sort of a mission where I was just like, this cannot happen. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but Portugal right now, we are the country in Europe that has the third oldest population in terms of percentage of the population, but we're also the ones who invest the least in the elderly. So there's a huge dysfunction in how we're dealing with the amount of older people that we have. And we've been aware of this issue. We know that it's only going to get worse, but yet the government is not taking any steps, any real steps. There's been lots of studies about how this is impacting people, not only people's lives, but society at large, but nothing gets done. And I always say that it's easier to break society than it is to bend it. And that's kind of what's happening in this regard, is that we're seeing that there's a massive problem, but the government is a machine that moves very, very slowly. And so it has to be us private citizens to do something about it.
Wow, and that's exactly what you did. You weren't going to wait around
That's
for
what I'm
the
trying to do.
politicians to fix it. This is amazing,
Yeah.
and I'm known as the Portuguese Pollyanna. And like an
Okay.
expat with an income or whatever phrase. Please slot in the name of your choice for me coming into Portugal. I've not got a problem with that. But for how I see it, it's very positively, and sort of rose-tinted spectacles. Still very much in the sort of honeymoon period of being in Portugal. And as you live in a country for a little while, you do begin to see, I suppose, reality. It might be called not just your sort of fantastical imposition on how you think it would be, and how you'd like it to be. And I'm really surprised to hear that. I don't doubt you for 1 minute. And as you say, well, yeah, actually, that makes sense. But I'd seen it from a different angle. I'm thinking Portugal. Wow, there's such a regard for older elders here, for old folks. There's such a great family connection. But like any other, modern Western neoliberal capitalistic country, it's facing this same problem, isn't it? Of how
Yeah.
properly resourced, and how on the one hand you have great family traditions. How does that work out on an everyday level for people when younger people are moving away, like moving away to other, not just around the country, but to other countries? And Portuguese
Yeah.
people are obviously renowned for that. The Portuguese diaspora, hard-working Portuguese folks all over the world. What does that mean for the families that get left behind? And there you are, you're exposing that picture. And so that makes for quite, sorry to use another sort of media cliche, but it's a ticking time bomb, isn't it, of what can happen?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the problem is that it gets compounded precisely because the Portuguese we're our culture is so family oriented. So what happens is that you have an elderly person, the family, the children take care of that person. But then what happens to the lives of the children? Their children need to care for their own children, and there's the sandwich generation, we call it, that they're stuck in between having to care for their parents and having to care for their children. And this is happening more and more because we're having children later.
Yes.
But also because we're living longer. So it becomes a seriously compounded problem. And so what we're trying to do with Lar no Lar is several different things. One, we're aiming to for this goal, which is called aging in place. And
Mhm.
aging in place so it's the idea of being able to age in your home within the things that you're familiar with. But it
Yeah.
doesn't just refer to the house, to the physical space, inside, but it refers to the neighborhood. It refers, to knowing where you get your bread from in the morning, and which supermarket or grocery store, little local grocery you go to. Those are all things that comfort us as we age, because we're continuing to be able to do the things that we've always done, as opposed to, if we're plucked from our home to be placed in a nursing home or to be moved away, then we lose all those connections. And that's part of what I'm trying to do. Also, one of the objectives here is we're not, because I have people going, I've had people call me and say, oh, so does that mean that you can place somebody in my mom's house, and she needs help with several things?
Yeah.
And we are for the people who are still independent and
Okay.
autonomous. So what we want to do is to help people maintain independence and autonomy and their quality of life for longer. So we really want to do what we try to aim for is to be a preventative choice. So if you're seeing that you're getting to a certain age and you're feeling lonely, and maybe you're still independent, but there's some things that they're becoming hard to do, then we're an option for you, because we can place someone in your house. And maybe we haven't really talked about how it works, what we're doing, have we?
Oh, we've
So
got time.
maybe
I just this context is so important, though, isn't it? And the timing as well. I loved how you described, the relationship you created with the person you lived with in London, your best mates, and that's
yeah,
like
we were
potentially
yeah.
that's the kind of new lease of life, isn't it? Because I
Yeah.
think there are sort of certain elephants in the room around this, aren't there? And in the back of our minds, or we're thinking about this for our elders. The elders might be thinking to themselves, it's a bit of a downward slope. But there are things you can do, aren't there, to extend your sense of well-being? And obviously, these are a vicious or virtuous circles, aren't they? Of like, you can invest in it and extend and make something greater on the spiral. We're never standing still, are we? We can spiral it upwards into well-being, or we can let it go its inevitable way, which might happen in the sort of systems we've got. And it sounds like you're intervening at the right time to, before it becomes too difficult to do something, and before people need some sort of acute care based on a chronic problem. So it sounds absolutely wonderful. Yes. So if you wouldn't mind, how does it work? What are the nuts and bolts of how it works?
Okay, so we've and when I say we're a nonprofit organization, and we've had an incredible amount of support from another organization called Home Share International, and they support entities that want to do this kind of thing worldwide.
Okay.
So they have a lot of resources, and they have a lot of information, which has been really helpful in us developing this. But what we've identified is that the elderly, unlike people from younger generations, they tend to live with more space than they have. So a lot of people, they don't move away from their family homes. The family moves away, but they stay in their home, which means that they have empty rooms that are not being used. And so
Yes.
we've decided that if we tap into that resource, we can help someone who is looking for affordable housing, or who is looking for a new family, because it could be, I really like the idea that this project can be used, people like, whether you're a foreign student or you're an immigrant or whatever it is, but you're away from home, from your place that you call home for
Yeah.
whatever reason, that you can, rather than going into a house full of strangers, if you rent a room like what I did in London when I moved to London, you can move into somebody's family home and you can become part of their family. So you tap into that resource. Um, and usually what happens is that if you're a student and if you're away from home, like I experience that a lot, here in Portugal, I have my own place. And when you live in your own place, you're quite busy, because you have cleaning to do and you're always buying stuff and there's always maintenance and things like that. But when you're away from home, you end up having a lot of free time. And what are you going to do with that free time? I'm not going to tell you what I was doing with my free time in London, because, I don't know, there might be some minors listening to the program here. I wouldn't want to get into that.
Oh, I feel like I must ask you about that now.
but the thing is, so it's like, be useful, use that free time that you have in a useful way, in a way that can be productive and in a way that can help other people. So the idea is that if you find someone who has, or can dispose of some of their time to help someone who can need a little bit of help, that's a great match. And if that person has an extra room, then
Yes.
we're matching these people. And what we're doing, and I always go back to this, because I feel that when I moved into this gentleman's house in London, I was very specific with my concerns and with the types of things that were important to me at the time. So this was soon after the Brexit vote, and that affected me emotionally a lot. So I was like, I cannot move in. I need to be able to talk to somebody about this. I need to be with someone who's on the same side of the issue as I am.
Yeah.
Um, and 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 I liked art, and so it was amazing because we would rant about things, we would watch the news together, we would go to galleries together. So we became best mates, and it was a really, really, really good relationship in that regard. So I feel that it's very important for both people to fill out a profile, and we have an extensive profile. It's a 5-page, and then some of it is multiple choice, and then some of it is tell us about you, what is that's important to you, what matters. So we can then find correspondence between people to maximize the chance that they will get along, and that there will be empathy, and that they will become good friends. And then, because we are a nonprofit, but we still need to feed ourselves, and we still need to cover expenses with lawyers and the website and all those other things, we do charge a fee to each person. So we try, but that fee is a fraction of what it would be if you were to get that help elsewhere. So the person, so they both pay us a fee every month, and we help and we support that relationship. So if there's any issues with there, we'll call you every month to check up on you, to make sure that everything is fine. And that's a little bit preventable, just against it. So it's a preventive action, just to make sure that everything is fine. And then obviously people can call us as well to see, to talk about any issues. We like to, whenever possible, we like to introduce the home sharers, or the cohabitants, we call them. So we're calling them a host or homeowner, and then the cohabitant or home sharer. We like to, if possible, whenever possible, introduce them to their families or best friends. So just so there can be a broader circle of social circles, just so people also can have others to refer to. Eventually, when we grow, we want to be able to have activities and meetings, so that then people can meet each other and go, oh yeah, I'm doing the same thing, and what challenges have you come across? Because I think it's really good to share experiences when you're living those experiences yourself.
Amazing.
So that's
What an inspiring
idea.
I've got so many things to ask you. All sorts of things. But the first thing I want to ask you is, who's going to play you in the movie of the adaptation of this? When this sounds like it's a Richard Curtis movie to me. I can see it, how it pans out filmically and how it becomes a beautiful friendship. So who's going to play you in the movie of this once Richard Curtis has got the screenplay?
Oh God, don't ask me. Ask whoever's watching this.
What about your? I mean, it's a role for Anthony Hopkins, isn't it, for the elder? I think.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. Could be.
Maybe Robert De Niro for the American market. De Niro would be amazing. Okay, sorry, but that's how my mind. I can see it as a beautifully touching film, and we are touching on emotional, important areas, aren't we, for the social future of humanity here? It's very important stuff, because I don't like the direction of travel here, with how it's looking, how you describe it, and you've opened my eyes to what's actually going on in Portugal. I can see how the government would say, well, let the families deal with it, because they're really good at that stuff. This is our family culture. Go ahead, families, look after your old people, without necessarily, and there is infrastructure, isn't there? I see that. It seems to be quite a good service of people when they're in absolute need, but actually leaving a lukewarm meal on the doorstep and then rushing off to the next house, that's not as good as it could be, is it? Let's face it.
No, it's not. It's not.
Could be a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we ask of the person who moves into who moves into the house is that they contribute with 8 to 10 hours a week of help and company. And for some, if you have a full-time job, or if you're studying full-time, that might seem like a lot, but when you're living in the property, it's not. We all need to go shopping, and we all need, we all spend time to go shopping. So we can either go with someone, or we can, tick off, someone else's list and go shopping for them. Most of us cook at home. So, it's not much difference, and it doesn't take much more time to cook for 2 and to cook just, than to cook just for 1 person. So there's many things that can be incorporated into these kinds of things. And then time really, if you have an outing on a weekend and you go out one day to a gallery, or if you go out one day to listen to live music when we're allowed again, that's a few hours spent, so it really will depend on the needs and wants of the person who's asking for help, and then what the other person is willing and can offer. But we ask 8 to 10 hours a week, which is, and just the assurance of having somebody who's at night with you, because we hear stories of people who had a stroke And because nobody was able to realize that they had a stroke for days, they didn't get the immediate care that they needed, but if somebody's living with you, it makes a huge difference, so that's, I like to talk about it as being preventive as well, and I've mentioned this before. It's not just, oh, I need help now. It's, look to the future and look where you're at now and where do you want to be in the next year and how, and because what we don't realize or what we don't think about it is that we get to a certain age where our bodies become more frail. And it could be just any small thing. And all of a sudden it's like, let's say, and I tend to use this because it's something that can illustrate. Let's imagine someone who has difficulty walking. Actually, let's not even go there. I'll say the example of, no, I'm not going to go there because I have an actual example of someone that helped, that happened.
Yes.
The gentleman that I lived with in London, he once fell. He was out and about and he fell. And he had an amazing sense of humor. He's like, I'm very special. Most people fall down the stairs. I fell up the stairs. He was going up the stairs and he fell forward, and he fractured his clavicle, which affected his shoulder. They sent him home, and he was supposed to do physiotherapy, but he also had early stages of Alzheimer's. So he, I ended up helping him with the physiotherapy. And it was his left shoulder. He was left-handed. And to go up the stairs in his house, and it was a 3-story house, the handrail was on the left-hand side. So he could no longer leave the house. He could go down the stairs because he would be using his right arm to go down, but to go up the stairs, he couldn't do it anymore. So because I was in the house, I was able to notice this, and I realized that he couldn't come up the stairs. So I spoke to him, and eventually social services had a handrail installed on the other side of the property, and he was able to go about his life. But the thing is, and sometimes it's these small things that happen that can really create a snowball of effects that really degrade somebody's quality of life. But just by having somebody there who can observe this and who can be paying attention to it and then take action, it can make a massive difference in people's lives.
Of course it can, because I think a lot of elders don't. Excuse me. Yeah, I think both of us are having our emotional moments here this morning, aren't we? Just have a little coffee. As people get older, as elders don't want to be any bother, they put up with the most extraordinary levels of pain. And I don't want to be a fuss to anything, and that's tragic, isn't it? Somebody having a stroke, but not wanting to be, the early signs of a stroke, and maybe losing a bit of mobility. Oh, it'll pass, as they think, as they live on their own, and it doesn't. And having someone there to pick that up and say, look, come on, I'm ringing for a paramedic, and they say, oh, don't fuss. No, I'm doing it, and sometimes it takes that call, doesn't it, to catch something early like that.
Absolutely.
And to echo what you're saying there, one of the problems for the elderly, and we've got lots of lovely comments coming in, one of the problems for the elderly, if they lose their partner, age can restrict mobility, which only magnifies loneliness, and the situation just spirals. And that's what we recognized before, isn't it? This sort of downward spiral, if this intervention isn't there with your lovely project. Okay, so we've got some ideas already. Halle Berry should play you in the film. So, thank you. Oh, someone's just brought me Mrs. M's just brought me a tissue. Thank you, someone. Very much, Mrs. M.
I need someone to bring me a tissue.
do you want to grab something for a minute? Because I don't want to have you struggling.
Actually, you know what? I have one here.
Okay, all right. And everyone else is all right for you lot at home watching this, who are dabbing your eyes with whatever you can find on around you. But it's a bit more difficult for me and Joyce here. And the other suggestion was Jessica Alba. So far, De Niro and Jessica Alba in the beautiful movie that can be made of this wonderful project that you're telling us about this morning. Let's see who else is here and what they're saying this morning. I think some of your friends might be here this morning, but from Harrogate this morning in Yorkshire. Wow, it's a sunny day in Yorkshire. Wow. Who'd have thought it gets to 9 degrees maybe today? Get the cozy out. I'm not sure what that means, but yes. I'll get the cozy out. Maybe the swimming cozy. Maybe he's going swimming because it's 9 degrees in Yorkshire. A hardy Yorkshireman there. Bon dia alegria from a sunny Brixham in the UK. Or a bon dia alegria from a soaking wet hillside in central Portugal. Gutted I missed Terence yesterday. Hope you're all well. We're pretty good. We're talking about a very moving subject here, Pete. I'm sure you'd agree. Bon dia from a currently rainy Povoa de Vagim, awaiting sun later. Morning, Mark Jonesy's here as well from Oregon in the United States. I mean, I wonder if have you guys got something like this in the United States? Imagine you have somewhere. Yeah, a model hopefully that is being sort of replicated around the world. Kimberly, good morning to you. Yeah, somebody who agrees with your assessment of London weather there. Constant rain. It's very difficult for a Portuguese person, I think, to live in London. Love to you from Taryn there, I think. A nice
ex-colleague.
Ex-colleague.
Yeah.
Fritz Frank hello from Berlin, and Silver Coast is the same. Oh, somebody complaining about Silver Coast weather in Portugal. It'll pass. Don't worry, it'll pass, Louise. Morning from Sean Maguire. Hi, Sean. Mr. Connection. Maybe Donna Jacqueline's talking about me there. How many percentage of elderly in Portugal living alone? That's a very interesting statistic to know about.
So we don't have percentage-wise. I honestly don't know. I do know that this last year with the pandemic has been an eye-opener, but also, anyway, it hasn't been great. But there's been a lot more effort into really accounting, and seeing how many people are there. And we know that in a country of 10 million, there's over 500,000 elderly living alone.
No.
Or isolated. Yes, I know. When I read that number, and this is by the national statistics, so it's their official numbers. I was trying to think in my head, how is that possible? There's 500,000 people in Portugal, and I mean, there's 10 million people, but 500,000, it's that's more than 20%.
Yes.
Sorry, more than 5% of the population who are elderly and living alone or isolated. So living alone is, they live on their own, but isolation can become another issue altogether, because it means that they don't have anyone to go to, and they don't have anyone near them that can help them. So the numbers are quite, they're shocking. They're very shocking. Really.
Staggering for sure. And then that will have only been exacerbated in this last year of added isolation. Horrific.
Yeah.
So clearly something to something to work with there for sure. And this is what you're doing. You're reframing what could, we could keep being staggered and shocked, but there you are, reframing this and turning it into a positive thing for society.
Yeah, I'm trying to do something about it. And the thing is, so last year in Portugal alone, there were 3,500 illegal nursing homes that were shut down. So that's 3,500. Okay, with an average of 10 elderly people living in each. So there were 35,000 elderly people. I have no idea. I mean, 35,000 elderly people that were moved from nursing homes within the past year. So these illegal homes, they were discovered because of the pandemic, and because all of a sudden we had doctors and ambulances being called because people are dying. So I know. I can see your chin is dropped. I'm like, has the camera frozen? It's absolutely shocking. But what I don't know is, where do these people go? Because the reason why there's illegal homes is because the legal ones have massive waiting lists. And the only way usually you can have a place in a nursing home is if someone dies. So there's these massive. I mean, I don't know where those 35,000 elderly people who are living in illegal homes went.
What is an illegal? Do you mean like unregistered? So someone has thought to themselves, I know, I've got a big house, I'll just move lots of old folks in and charge them rent, and that's a solution.
Yeah. I mean, there's some care that's provided for, but the thing is that the families, and it's possible that sometimes the families don't even know that the homes are illegal.
Yes.
But it means that the families are stuck. They don't know what to do.
No,
they don't know what to do, and that's, I mean, why else would you place your loved family member in a place that is illegal? You wouldn't do that unless you don't have another choice.
Yeah, you must be desperate. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
I was recently talking to someone who, because I'm studying gerontology. I'm getting my postgrad in gerontology now, and and I've been.
What is that?
So gerontology is, so I don't know if you heard of the term geriatrics. Geriatrics has to do with the medical aspects of aging, while gerontology has to do with the social aspects of aging.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And someone that I know has a friend. He was looking for a home for their parents because they're getting to a point where they can no longer be independent, and so the place that he found closest to home, where he would be able to visit them frequently, it would cost 1,800 euros a month for each of his parents to go into this home. This is in a country where minimum wages, I don't even know what minimum wage is, but I think it's around 600 euros.
Yes, 3 times.
So
The cost is 3 times the minimum wage.
per person.
Yes,
And when you have, yeah, per person. So it's unbearable. It's unbearable for families, you know, and that's why people have to choose between caring for themselves or caring for their elderly family members. And it's, you know, it's a problem. And there's been studies after studies and reports written by well-renowned foundations here in Portugal that talk about this problem. And yet, you know, there's years ago in 2017, there was this massive document called the National Strategy for Aging Healthily and Actively, or something to that effect. And, you know, massive report with a strategy outlining this is what needs to be done. And then it went to Parliament and it went, oh, yeah, we need to do something about that. But nothing was signed into place. Nothing has been done. And it's just, you know, and the problem is only growing. So something absolutely has to be done. So it's actually one of my goals. I mean, I've never been one to think small, but what I really want to do, what I'd love to do, and I'm trying to start conversations with the local authorities here. And I'm also working with the University of the Algarve. So this, like last week, I presented the project in one of the classes for social studies. And I'm trying to get to public entities as well and authorities, because what I really want is for something like this to become part of policy. I want this to become an offer that when somebody goes into Social Security or when they go to social services and they say, listen, I need help caring for my mom, or, you know, I'm worried about my neighbor, I'm worried, whatever it might be. I want it to become something where the authorities themselves say, okay, these are the options, and that Lar or a project like Lar is an option, you know, because I want to grow this to a point where I can have basically help other people start their own similar programs. I don't, you know, the objective here is to help. It's a social innovation project, which means that the main goal is to help people. And I'm not going to be able to help people on my own. So I need other people to come on board and to join in forces and say, yes, let's change this and let's do something great.
Yes. Okay. And there you go. You know what to do, folks. Find a way to help out here. That is absolutely what we need to do. It's amazing. I mean, you are articulating a horrific societal problem. No question about that. What happened? This is a terrible situation for us to be in as a society, isn't it? And I'm not just talking about Portugal. Portugal's not alone at all in this regard, is it? And I'm sure there are places that are worse. But clearly something is wrong with this picture, as they say, because there is no shortage of people at the supply end, if you like, who are also by society compromised in their outlook on life, can't afford to live in a city where they want to live, or you know, other resource issues. And so it's just a matter of matching up the right things here, isn't it, and making it work. And not I don't know what's the word, tolerating this senselessness of how we've begun to run our societies, where we've got so many people and so much loneliness. Something is clearly not quite right there. Pete brings up an interesting issue here, and I think you have touched on it, and it sounds like you're very diligent in this regard. But he says, a wonderful idea, but how do you stop abuse? Sorry, I just watched I Care a Lot on Netflix. So often when people have watched something shocking, you know, like when you watch the vegan documentary, you become a vegan the next day. I think Pete is obviously very concerned now, but I don't know of this documentary. But is this about abuse of elders or
Yes, it's a film. I started watching it and then I decided that I needed to watch something a little bit more uplifting.
Yes.
So I didn't finish watching it. But we do have different things in place for abuse. So what we do is that there's a few different documents that have to be signed. And the first one is this application, which is quite extensive. We request from both sides a criminal record So not just from the person who's moving into the elderly, but from the elderly person themselves. We also request a criminal record, and that's because we feel that we're accountable to both parties.
Yes.
We also request references, and we check up on them. So we request written references, and then we call them up and follow up on that just to make sure, and we keep them on people's files. And then this all becomes part of the person's process. So it's not just a matter of saying I have a house and I need company. You know, it is a little bit of a process.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that we do, so part of our terms, there are terms that people sign with us, because we're not an employer. Okay, we're basically, what we are is more of an agency that facilitates two people meeting, and then the two people will decide, and with our help, you know, whether they want to do this or not. And so the agreement is actually between the two people. And so there's an agreement that's signed with us where we lay out what services we provide, and we do follow up on things, and we check up to make sure that everyone is happy. And there's also a document signed between the two people whereby they agree how they're going to behave. One of the things that we have done to protect the person who owns or who lives in the house initially is that as part of that agreement, it says that whoever's moving in, they cannot make themselves beneficiaries of a will. Okay, so that, and by doing that, we're protecting. I mean, you're laughing, but it's something.
Yeah, you've got to do that.
It's something. No, we're doing this to protect the family of the elderly person. But
course.
but we're also, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that because we are doing this with elderly people who are independent and autonomous, we have to assume that they are capable of caring for themselves, and they are capable of raising the flag, and we will definitely empower them with that ability in terms of being open to talk about things, any sorts of abuse. Because what I don't want to get into, and this is a big problem in society, is that we tend to treat the elderly in a patronizing and condescending way. It's like, oh, you poor little thing. She doesn't know what she talks about. She doesn't know what she wants for herself. It's like, if your mind is okay, and even if your mind is going, I've met a lot of people where their minds are going, but they know exactly what they want. Yes. And so I don't want to step into a position where I'm suddenly making decisions for the elderly people or protecting them of things that they don't need. They're not children. So they, while we do have certain things in place, we trust that they will be able to contact us if there are issues. And then in that regard, and that's why it's important that this is an agreement between the two people, and that agreement clearly states that the agreement is only in force while they both want to do it. So there's no, all of a sudden you have a tenant that you can't get rid of.
Yes.
That's not going to exist here, because it's while the two people want it. And because of that, we also need to make sure that whoever moves in with the elderly person, that they have options, or that they can find options. Eventually, as we grow, we hope to get to a point where if something happens and suddenly they have to move out, of a place, we're hoping to be able to get to a point where we have funds to cover, somebody moving into a motel or something for a few nights until they get back on their feet. Because those, things can happen.
Of course they can. This is life. This is real life, isn't it? And you're thinking about it, which is fantastic. And I love the social mission alone to stop infantilizing elders is enough work in its own regard. And you're bringing this in as part of your project, which is fantastic. I appreciate
the only way we can do that, the only way to stop doing that and stop treating the elderly people in a patronizing way, is to get younger generations to interact closely with them.
Yes.
So that they can go, oh, he's a person or she's a person in her own right, and she has a mind of her own, and look at what she's achieved throughout her life. Because we tend to think of the elderly people as somebody who's coming to the end of their lives without thinking of everything that they've accomplished and everything, all the value that they've accumulated in knowledge and in experiences. And that's something that we need in society. We need to learn from them, because it's the other thing, I mean, one of the other objectives of this is that I don't want it to be just that because when an elderly person goes into a home, what happens is that they become the recipients of help. So they receive help, but what are they giving in return? And we know that this is actually a massive contributing factor to depression in the elderly. And it's not just in the elderly, it's in most people. If you're just if you're just receiving help constantly without being given the opportunity to give something back, it's not good. It doesn't make, it's not great for your self-worth. It doesn't, so it's important to make the elderly person feel like they can contribute, and they are contributing. So we're just really trying to do this, and I like to think of this as a holistic solution for a very big problem, because we're basically ticking a lot of boxes. And our website, if you, since you have your finger on the button there, if you go into the section, if you scroll to the top, please, and go to why, and then you scroll down into that grid.
Yes.
So we have in turquoise, you can see it's in English there in turquoise, but basically talks about the different benefits. And those benefits were actually picked by, this is what's important for the elderly. Yeah. And then the most common offers, the most common options, for when somebody's getting old. Yeah. And so everything from wanting to maintain your autonomy to being able to stay in your house and your neighborhood, to being able to still create affectionate relationships with others around you. There's all these different things that are important to people. And, I say elderly people because this is what the project is aimed at, but it's not just for elderly people. These are things that are important to most of us. And when you look at, the one that, other than Lar, the one that gives us the most of those options, most of those benefits, is hiring private help within your house. But then that becomes quite expensive.
Yes.
But even if you have private help, most of the time they're not sleeping in the house. They go away, they'll come in a few days a week. At least that's how it's done here in Portugal. You hire someone who comes in a few days a week, they'll help you cook and they'll help you clean the house. But then the most common one, which is it's a care home, basically it gives you security because you know that nobody's going to break into your room in the middle of the night. Yeah. And other than that, it just it helps you maybe make new friends. But then all of the other things that are important, you're going to have lunch when they tell you to have lunch, and you're going to have to eat what they tell you to eat, and you're going to have to,
and it's miserable picture, isn't it, really?
That's not what I want for myself when I get there, by no means, and so this is about prolonging for as long as we can and for as long as we're capable of. This is about prolonging that, to allow us to be able to have those choices.
Fantastic. Quite amazing. Good morning, everyone. What a fascinating topic from Mrs. M for today's show, and a subject that people often ignore. I think it's disgraceful, actually, the way we treat how we've over the years have come to treat elderly people, and we've robbed ourselves. I think you were alluding to this earlier on. We've robbed ourselves of the value but everything just gets industrialized in our society, doesn't it? Education's like that, in my view. So is the care of the elderly. It's like, what's the cheapest way we can do it so that everyone can keep working, and all the worst possible values are driving this. And in the process, we've marginalized old folks, we've infantilized them, and we've robbed ourselves of the gift that elders can give back. And that must be frustrating for them. And it's something some young people don't even know is possible anymore, because that's how we've been doing it for decades now. I'll get off my soapbox for just a minute and say a few more comments. Bon dia, todos from Jersey over there in the States. Good morning from a rainy Torres Vedras from Susan. Marcos Valbons here. Bon dia, Carl. And Olaf from UK, from Paul and Louise there. When people, often women, come out of being in that sandwich situation, they can feel quite lost. It's empty nest on steroids. Yes, I can imagine, Louise. Absolutely. Bon dia, alegria. Apologies for being late this beautiful morning. You are forgiven. Donna Jacqueline, Community Heart. I think that's an award given to you this morning. Unfortunately, the courts are clogged with notoriously corrupt in certain countries. Yes, all right, Pete. Nice political point there. Good morning, everyone. Taryn, love the passion for this. I think you're not alone in that, Taryn. I think a lot of people are with you in really appreciating what Joyce and Lar are doing here. A wonderful program. Congratulations. Do you find, in terms of the older people involved, that it's mostly women, or is there a good gender balance? Interested as working with a project for broadly older men and keeping them engaged and independent in Northwest Europe. So interesting, a possible collaborator there. But yeah, gender balance, both sides, the cohabitants and the home owner.
Yeah.
What's that like?
So it's in Portugal, women outlive men. Men tend to be more, they tend to take greater risks. So they drink more and they smoke more, and they're less likely to go to the doctor. So they end up not living as long. And so because of that, we do see more women who reach an older age, and who end up being on their own. So that happens more often. Yes, that's one of the situations here. Another thing I'd like to, because we're mostly talking about Portuguese society, and I'd like to tap a little bit on what's happening with, because we know that Portugal is a country that the English people love.
Yes.
So in Portugal, I have the numbers from 2019. The numbers from 2020 are about to come out, but we know that they will have increased greatly. So 2019, we had about close to 36,000 British people residing here. So with their documents, residency here in Portugal.
The official one.
Yeah, that's the official number. Of those, roughly half, so close to 18,000, are in the Algarve.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And of those, of the roughly 18,000 that live in the Algarve, 8,000 are 65 and over.
Good heavens.
So it's becoming a problem, or and it's something that the local councils have recognized. So most local councils have this document that gets published every so often, however many years, and it's they call it like a social letter or a social document, and it basically outlines any social issues, which could be anything from problems with the youth to whatever might be. And it does, they are starting to identify the elderly foreign community as something that we need to be aware of, and something that will grow as a problem. Because if you've chosen to, if you've adopted Portugal as the country where you want to live and the country where you want to age, but then let's say, you get to a certain age and you're on your own, do you really want to go back home? Just because you have more support there, or do you want to stay here? And so what we're hoping to do is to actually be able to tap into that and be able to bring in someone who's Portuguese, who speaks both Portuguese and English, into these people's homes. And, and that would help them integrate into society, be able to learn a little bit of the language, be able to navigate the system, which to me, I'm Portuguese, I'm still baffled by just how this whole thing works, because bureaucracy is not my thing. And it's, but I'm just hoping that by doing this, it will also help the British community integrate better into Portuguese society, because there's a tendency to want to speak your language and to find the people that you have something in common with, and then what happens is that you end up being in your own communities, and you create your own alternative world without really tapping into the potential that there is. What you're doing here is really great, because you frequently bring in people who are Portuguese, talk about the Portuguese culture and what's going on here, and that's amazing. But that's not the reality for most people's daily lives. They just kind of tend to stay in their community. So if they have the opportunity to bring in someone who's not just the cleaner or the gardener, but somebody who's actually there who can help you figure out what's going on in the news, or figure out what's going on, or what's the best fish to buy when, that sort of thing. I think it would be something really powerful, and even help you navigate the medical system, if you need to go to the doctor, those sorts of situations. So that's part of what I'm trying to do.
As in, initiate those relationships for the expat immigrant community in the Algarve.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Because there is, if the official number, and this is from 2019, the numbers are from 2019. We also know that since the Brexit referendum, that the applications for residency in Portugal by British citizens has gone up by 111%.
Okay.
So so it's likely that when the 2020 numbers come out, that it's going to be a lot higher than
Sure
that.
it
So,
is. Sure it
so
is.
yeah.
Well, people have laughed at me, Joyce, because I was thinking that my longer term plan here is to start a residential home, and it will be a bit like Fawlty Towers, and I will be the John Cleese character, and Mrs. M, will be Sybil, and it is a great country to do that in, and I think I'm kind of joking, but I'm also not joking. I think it's really important for people to live socially. This is again, it's a way we're robbing ourselves, isn't it? And it comes from the politics, economics, and fear. I mean, we have to own some of that as well ourselves, don't we? The fear of doing this because we're out of the habit and creating those relationships. But I think it's overcoming your fear and having the systems that you've obviously created to deal with worst case scenarios is the way forward. Otherwise, we're going to be robbing ourselves if we keep going down to smaller and smaller units. Single parents, single people, old folks in their homes alone, and they're all alone, and there's millions of them. There's something really not right about that, is there? We are literally robbing ourselves of the richness of life that could come from people overcoming their fear a little bit and changing the systems, probably only slightly, to encourage a more social and communitarian way of life. I mean, it can't get much worse, let's face it. So hopefully you're part of this rebound from this era of stupidity where we've made ourselves lonely and socially isolated with the systems that we've got. Liz Ann, I love this idea. Wonderful. This is such a nice idea, says Detail Movement. I'll play. I think Taryn wants a part in the movie, possibly. That's and people are liking. But only if Morgan Freeman is my counterpart. Okay, I'll see what I can. When we call Hollywood after the show, we'll see what we can do for you there, Taryn. The whole idea is amazing. I have questions. Do you have any requirements from cohabitants, and how long do you have to declare to live together? So you've covered some of that, but is there a minimum time to live together?
So we ask for a minimum commitment of 6 months from both parts. And the reason for that is that most of the work is in verifying references and in finding people that have a correspondence. So and we don't want to invest all of that work and then just have somebody who's going to stay for a couple of months. So ideally, we're looking for a minimum of 6 months. And then in terms of requirements, we need them to be adults. And we need them to be responsible, and we check that. Obviously, we'll have interviews, and then the criminal record will help with that, and also the references. So we check on that.
Okay, excellent. So 6 months and I imagine once you got to that sort of point, you're thinking longer term after that, aren't you? It's because you become bonded. Christina, like self-declaration here. I am really old. No, I am old, really. I am old, really. Going for my first Valentine's Day, we have to get older people to learn how to use and connect with people on the internet. Lead the way, Christina. You're obviously doing that by your own declaration there. I started learning at 50 and never looked back. Fantastic, Christina. We need to get you on. We need to get you on the show, I think, Christina. Beautiful cause carried by the right person from Amelie.
Amelie.
Just get up. Okay, so that's when the suggestions were coming through. What happens when there is no family? Says Ernest. So do you act as an advocate and power of attorney or whatever for solitary?
No. So when there is no family, and again, this goes back to the reason why the elderly people need to be autonomous and independent. So they need to be able to we need to be able to judge that they're making this decision of their own free will, and that they are capable and that they understand what they're doing. And part of it, we do a small assessment just to check that there is no dementia that could prevent them, that basically could make them go into this without them realizing what they're doing. And then the other thing is that we have, so if somebody has no family, actually sometimes they're in a better situation, or they really need this, but there's usually friends or a close friend who's nearby who they can trust. So for example, I interviewed older people before where they don't have any family nearby, and so a neighbor or somebody who sees them frequently will come in and be there, because it's not something that's needed legally, but it's just for my own peace of mind. I just like to know that there is someone there so that they don't go, oh, she made them sign this document, or whatever. So at least there's a witness there, and we know what was taken care of, and we know what was spoken. And then also because if, and again, it depends on the level of vulnerability of the older person, but sometimes if they have a question, it might be a lot easier to ask somebody who lives next door, or somebody that they're comfortable and they're familiar with their voice. And so maybe it's easier for them to understand them over the phone than to be calling a stranger and to say, I wasn't sure about this. Can you explain? So it's good for them to then afterwards, after the initial meeting, to have someone else that they can bounce ideas with and ask questions.
Perfect. I mean, this is part of the problem of loneliness and isolation, isn't it? We don't have extended accountability. People hide in their loneliness as well, don't they? Or not, they don't hide in their loneliness, but they hide in the isolation that we've created in society. So if people were part of their community, there would be a greater sense of accountability as well, which would be another of the benefits. It sounds like a wonderful program. How do you get over the moment when the cohabitant moves on and a bond has been formed? I mean, that is it, hankies at the ready. I mean, that's life, isn't it? I mean, this is going to happen inevitably. People die and so on. And we have to be.
I mean, that can happen. Like I've mentioned earlier, me and I call him my old man. Actually, I used to call him my young man. He'd be offended if I called him my old man. But we became really close friends. But he also had dementia. He had Alzheimer's, and he had social services supporting him. He had a whole circle of other entities around him because he had no family. And we became really close. But this is just to understand the transformative power and the impact that something like this can have in someone's life. So my dad was ill here in Portugal. I was living with this gentleman. I was able to save a huge amount in rent every month, which meant that I was able to take the risk, and I resigned from my job and I started my own thing. Okay, this is back in London. So I thought, I've saved up enough money that I can do this. Actually, I can just ditch the old job and try to do something on my own. But then I was doing it from home, and when you're working from home and you have an elderly person who suffers from dementia, and they're really attached to you, it meant that he was constantly asking me questions, and he was constantly interrupting me, and he became really dependent on me, and because I was there all the time. And unfortunately, at the time, there was just no, social services couldn't step in with further help, basically to either help distract him or, whatever it was. And it just got to a point where everything was falling on my shoulders. If something breaks down in the house, I have to be the one who makes the call, and I have to be the one who pays before the lawyers pay me back. And it just got to a point because his condition was deteriorating. So basically, for my own sanity, I ended up leaving the house, which was really, really difficult. But I'm still in contact with him. We still call each other. And I'm surprised sometimes because when I call him, I'll go a few weeks without calling him. Now I'm always like, God, does he still remember me? But he'll go, Joycey, when are you going to come and visit me? And he's forgotten that I've moved to Portugal, but it's lovely. It's lovely. But I ended up having to leave because I became too close to him. And because of the relationship that was formed, he just became really dependent on me, and I couldn't do anything. I ended up feeling like I was constantly, like I was stressed out. If I had to go away for the weekend, I would get stressed out. But what that also did, in addition to being able to allow me to work for myself, it also meant that I had, before his condition started to deteriorate as well, it also meant that I could go away not most weekends, but I got to a point I was coming to Portugal almost every other weekend to see my dad.
Cool.
So mentally, it wasn't great.
Yeah, sure.
Because I had, I was living my life between these two men who weren't well. And I was always, when I was with one, I was worrying about the other, and vice versa. So it became, but it was wonderful that I was able to do that. And it's something that I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise.
Yes, indeed. So a definite upside. But also what I'm hearing there, Joyce, is that you've done that, and you know what that is like, and been enriching in one ways and tragic in others. But you also now have it's the community accountability, isn't it? If someone is in Lar no Lar and they're experiencing that, they're not alone with it, are they? You can say, look, this is going beyond what the agreement is now. This is too stressful for you. We need to help you. And that's again, that's a facility not afforded people when it comes down. I looked at my father on a sort of remote control and visiting him every week, and it's very stressful. And then you do begin to feel the pressure of that alone. You do need help around you, don't you, to say, actually, this is taking its toll on you, because just like the old folks who won't acknowledge with their health condition, perhaps the younger folks side can be like that as well, can't it? It's like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Fine, I have to do this. I have to. Who else will do it if I don't? And with if you sit in a community or sit in an organization, and that relationship is managed or helped by an organization, the organization can say, okay, you're doing enough, or you're doing too much.
Yeah.
You need some other help. This is great. Okay, bon dia from Greece, from Olga this morning.
Oh, wow. Greece has an aging population,
of course,
as well, and also very family-oriented culture.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure sort of similar things happening there. Paul and Louise, mobility becomes a big issue, especially in the rural hamlets where there is no public transport available. Yeah, so people could become very isolated out there when they can no longer get the bus into. We know the Portuguese old folks who are on that bus into town and back again. And that's a vital lifeline, isn't it? So true. Radio phone in discussed this once, and lots of over 60s called in saying internet had solved loneliness problems. Meetup. Cam's meetup came up a lot. Oh, okay, yeah, excellent. Thomas, these simple mobilities issue are a major issue here. We live in a little cobbled travessa, but the condition of the cobbles and the incline make it almost impossible for our 80, 90-year-old neighbour to get up to the main street 2 blocks away. Minor street repairs and a handrail will make major quality of life difference for limited investment. Thomas, I'm coming over with my tools this weekend. People are taking this into their own hands if the local authority do it. A lot of elders keep on with what they're used to, but if you bring new things, small changes with tact, they realise it is helping them a lot. I'm sure you've seen that. That Amelie is saying there. Hello from Edinburgh, who recently lost their Jew from Detail. Is this somebody you know? Detail Movement.
Yes.
Okay. Taryn.
It's lovely to see Speedo. Yes, Taryn.
I think you might be talking about Paul's outfit in 9 degrees, possibly in his Speedos in Yorkshire. I don't know. Just a guess. Good morning, host. Best wishes, Jessica from Refat. Not sure what. Jessica Alba. I guess you already been called Jessica Alba.
Maybe. Oh, God. Okay.
From Florbella Pereira. Milda. I also need a tissue watching this emotional. Yes,
God, yeah.
Geriatric field. I deal with similar problems every day. Oh, bless you, Milda, and the wonderful work you're obviously doing. Wonderful idea, Cindy Christopher. Aloha from Waikiki, Oahu.
Amazing.
Hawaii. Oh, lovely. Thomas Malloy has put a link.
Yeah, that's the article. Yeah.
Fantastic, Thomas. Thank you.
That's the article in Publico that talks about 500,000 elderly people living alone in Portugal, and the majority of them are women. Yeah.
Wow. Bon dia, the value for you is doubling when we are giving. Beautiful sentiment there from Portugal. How do you go about vetting the individual who may be interested in home sharing? So we've dealt with that, Catherine, I think. And if you joined us late, watch back, because we did cover that earlier on. And I know I'm keeping Joyce. We said we might talk for an hour. Are you all right for 10 or 15 minutes more, Joyce?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
People have got a lot to say about this. Good morning from a wet Lisboa. Working in the rain makes me miss Manchester. Can't be many people saying that this morning. And some. So the illegal nursing homes, there were. You said
3,500. So there were 3,500 that were shut down, and with 35,000 people. So on average, 10 people per nursing home. Yeah.
What do people have made this commitment? People who've made this commitment do if they want to take trips and be away for a few days or go for a few weeks once or twice a year. So presumably respite is very important with this and really.
Yes. It's absolutely fine. So the idea is that people will live together as if they were a family. And if you're living with a family member, that family member is entitled to go away on holiday or spend the occasional weekend away. And that's part of the understanding. And again, it goes back to these people. So we need the elderly to be independent and be autonomous. Obviously, if somebody needs to go away. So for example, if in my particular situation, because the person I was living with, his condition was deteriorating, I personally didn't feel comfortable leaving him completely on his own. So I always gave notice and, basically notified social services that I was going away for a few days. And then they just called the caring company, and they would have somebody who came in to prepare meals more often, or somebody who came in the middle of the day to spend an hour with him.
Yeah.
But that was the arrangement that I had, and it was something that I had to create because I was like, he can't be on his own. He's used to having somebody in the house.
Brilliant.
But normally, yeah, under normal circumstances, what we ask is that you tell us and that you warn the person, and then if there's family around, also let them know and give enough notice so that if an alternative arrangement needs to be made, so for example, I've known of people that they need to go away on holiday, but then maybe they have a child, who son or daughter who can come and spend a few days with their parent, So if an arrangement needs to be made, but obviously we're not going to hold you hostage to live in that place and not be able to leave.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, and the precedents are there. That's the other great thing about this, isn't it? Is that you have I suppose you're gathering a body of wisdom and experience that you
Yeah,
fall upon. So
I
people tend to reinvent all of this stuff on their own, don't they?
Yeah, and I think my experience, because my experience was quite unusual. So at the time, I was asking the entity that placed me in this man's house. I was asking them, what do you have other people? Because I was trying to learn more about his illness, about dementia, about Alzheimer's, and trying to figure out what can I expect.
Yeah.
Because he was such a cheerful man. He was always in such a good mood and so funny. And one day he shouted at me. He was livid because I was suggesting he might need a walking stick to help him, and he was just like, I'm just fine. And he starts dancing at the top of the stairs. And I'm just like, oh my God, is that rail, if he trips over, is that rail going to be strong enough, And I was
Yeah.
just trying to figure out. And then I found out, okay, this is part of his condition, that he might lose it every now and again.
Yes.
But again, he lost it because I was insinuating that maybe he might need a little bit more help than what he thought he needed, and he was not going to have it. He was not having it.
And again, that's life, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
part of my condition is losing it every now and then, for sure. And
yeah,
it's life, isn't it? And we have to kind of, as unpleasant as it might be, I'm sure, again, you've got precedents and training and support to manage those moments in life. I mean, what else
yeah,
are we supposed to do?
yeah, absolutely.
Lizanne, this is such a relevant topic, especially now, and it's close to my heart. My father still lives on his own at 87. Is lucky to have my sister nearby to check on him. I live far away, but on a recent visit, it was very clear how that while he manages, he needs someone to help him with shopping and other household things as he starts to lose his memory and his motor coordination. Someone really needs to check on him at least every other day, and he didn't have my sister. He would really have. I'm not sure, but we get the gist of that as that
Yeah.
drifts. The comment is a bit
Well,
long. Yeah.
Liz, depending on where you are, I don't know where you are in the world, but these programs, if you look up home share or home sharing, and if you go to homeshare.org, you will find information, and they'll have a list of programs that are signed up, and this is something that exists all over the world.
Yes.
So not every country has it, but many countries do, and depending on where your father is, it's possible that there's a program nearby that can support him.
Oh, that's really great. And this is the website you're
Oh,
looking
yes.
for,
How can you
international?
support your efforts? Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's the big question, and we've brought your attention to the need here, everybody. So, Joyce, tell us, how can we support you? What's needed for this organisation, Lar No Lar, at the moment?
Okay, so like I said, we're a nonprofit. I have been working on this nearly full time for the past year. I'm not earning an income on this yet, and there's lawyers' bills. There's all sorts of things. So if you can donate, there's a donate button on the website with our account information. If you can donate in any way, that is a great way to help. You can
Yeah.
help us by going to our social media pages and sharing it with your friends and family, especially in Portugal, where at the moment we are doing this. Mostly we're focusing in the Algarve because that's where I'm based, and that's especially with the pandemic. That's where it's easiest to get to. This is where, because I just since the last week or so, I've been able to travel outside of my local council. So we're focusing our efforts in the Algarve. So if you can share them, that would be great. Share on your social media and make comments and really try to push it. If you know other media outlets that would like to interview me, that would be amazing as well, because we need to spread the word on this. And again, I'm not just speaking for myself or
Yes.
for this project, but worldwide, there's other associations. So if you're in Australia, there's Home Share in Australia. And if you're there, and if you have any connections with the media, that would be great, because we can help other people that are doing the same. The other thing, if you're in Portugal and you know how the law works here, and if you'd like to volunteer your time then I'd love to ask some questions because I love my lawyer, but he's a little bit expensive. And so we, although he has given me a discount on occasion, but it would be great. And then again, so spread the word. If you know anyone in the media, it would be amazing. If you know any local authorities, spread the word about us. Say how amazing it is, and say that this is how you'd like to age. You'd like to see this as an opportunity for you as we get older, because
Absolutely.
I think that's one way. Everyone that I've spoken to, there's not been a single person who's just said, I'd be fine with a nursing home.
Yes, I'm fine with a nursing home or social isolation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, nobody has said that. So we need to start, and I don't think our parents, the people that we're now worried about, I don't think they thought much of their future. They didn't think, they didn't plan for it because they weren't thinking of living as long as they have. Life, every year on year, we're living longer than it's expected.
Yeah.
So, and if we're still retiring at 65 or whatever, I'm not counting on retiring, so I don't know what retirement age is. But if we're, it used to be that we would retire and we would be dead within a few years. And now we're living 30 years past retirement. What are we going to do with that time? And what is our life going to be like? Because we'll have, the typical, yes, I'm so excited, I've retired, I'm going to travel around the world. And then we come home and we go, all my friends are still working, or now they're traveling, or they're being grandparents and I don't have any grandchildren, whatever. And then reality hits and we're like, what am I going to do with my time? And how do you give back to society? Because it's a big part of feeling good and having quality of life. It's feeling that you are included. And the great way to be included is to give something back and to be part of it. So if you can, I think this is something that we need to plan for now. And we need to start fighting now for these sorts of options to exist, so that when we get there and when we need them, so this becomes an option for us. It's basically planning for the future.
It is well said, and let's honor and treasure and enjoy what elders can give to society in a way that we've gradually year on year eroded. I think Paul seems to agree. I believe this is a world situation. Modern generation attitude to the elderly has changed, yet it is the elderly generation that gave young people the freedom they enjoy today. And these are the sort of little conversations you'd have around the dining table with the elder you live with. It would be quite extraordinary, wouldn't it? In Berlin, they started a program some years ago sharing big flats by a group of elderly people together with students. Oh, that's more of a communal thing. And I remember reading about that. Yeah, that worked out really well. It's about knowing and caring of one another. We are working on prevention. We are all on the route. And what can we do to set ourselves up for what's coming and support our own families from having to deal with what's coming? We're looking at building a large community of small, affordable homes as an option for some. So Rizal is involved in this in another way. I think there's quite a lot of support in all sorts of ways here in this community because people understand it in this demographic, I think. Morning, says Deborah Davies. Good morning to you. Kindness is key. This is so clear and well considered in what you're doing by the sound of it from your friend Taryn there. They see us as boomers who left them with massive federal deficits. Well, that's another interesting conversation to have around the dining table should you find yourself in a cohabitation. I mean, there's some truth in that, but the thing is to talk about it, isn't it? Jones, sorry, I think you wanted to say something there, Joyce.
No, I was just going to say that part of the issue is that we have, so there's a lot of, the boomers, it's not their fault,
No, yes,
none of it is their fault. But the thing is, we do have a huge amount of elderly people, and it's only growing. And the way that society works is that society has to be productive, right? We have to produce, because then with production comes economic growth, and then we can find, then public finances are another great part of it, and finally social security and social help, social supports. But we can't get the social support unless there's the production or the productivity that feeds into the whole cycle. And what's happening is that when people age, there's not as much, we have more elderly people now that are not productive than we do have people that are still working in Portugal, and that's going to be a reality. So we need to find ways of either not depending so much on this productivity, or we need to find ways of helping the elderly still contribute towards society. in different ways, but we can't really force people to continue working, if they don't want to once they reach retirement age. So, so pointing fingers, it can be, as banter, it's great, but it's not the solution, because none of us asked to be here. None of us asked to be born. And, we can blame politicians maybe because of the decisions that they've made, but we've also placed them there.
Well,
so,
Joyce, excellent. Thank you for that little point of order there. That's brilliant. You're absolutely right. It's you're right. Pub banter. You lot got us in this situation, and older folks say, "Well, it's your thing to sort out now." We've got, after all of that, that the heat of that debate, we still got the situation to deal with, haven't we? We're better off working together with each other and not blaming each other. You're absolutely right. In the UK, some of the cost of care homes were met by local councils. Do they not have the same arrangement here in Portugal?
Yes, they do. But that cost, who pays for the money that the local councils pay for? It's us.
Yes.
It's us. So we're back to the cycle of, and that's what I'm trying to do with Light, is making, if we can sustain ourselves, making access to these services a lot cheaper, so that people are allowed to pay for it themselves, because the cost of a care home can be 1,800 euros here.
Yes.
If you're not paying for it, if the council is paying for it, it's all of us who are paying for it. But if instead of 1,800, if you can pay 80 euros a month, which is what the cost of Light is for an elderly person, the monthly fee is, if you can pay that instead, to have someone live with you who can be there and help you out and help you maintain that quality of life for longer, it's a much better solution. And I'm not saying that we're going to prevent everyone from having to go into a nursing home, but what I'm saying is that it will reduce the amount of time that person will have to be in a nursing home, because they will be able to have, and so will be a lesser cost for us as a society. It will be a lesser cost for the government, but it's also going to be all these wonderful things which will teach us, the younger generation, how, all these things that we can learn from the older people, older generations that we're just not being exposed to, that we're not learning because we do not interact with them.
Yes, it's about value as well as cost, because that's got us in this. Only being concerned about cost has got us in this problem, I would say, and undermining and not being aware of value is the other part of it. Talking of being valued, we won't go past 10:30, I promise you, but I just think people want to be heard here. Being valued and giving value as an older person is what keeps me happy. Absolutely, Donna Jacqueline.
Yes, thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah, and Donna Jacqueline, I have to say, is a very giving person into our community, and has demonstrated herself to be so, and is quite a brilliant example. Not quite, it is a brilliant example. I mean, quite in the superlative, not in the diminutive. There, quite a beautiful and kind mission, detail movement. I think Fritz Frank has gone from loving the idea to really loving the idea this morning. The richness of wealth and advice they have to offer. This is about elders as well, isn't it? You plan to organise gatherings and events when the sanitary situation will be better, of course, so everyone can chat and exchange about their experiences. Sounds like a conference is in order as well, isn't it, to bring people together to talk about this?
Yeah, so Home Share International, they do hold conferences every year or every couple of years. This year's was cancelled, as was last year's. And that's an opportunity for people who were working in the area to do that. But then as an organization, I do plan on having events, like meetups occasionally, so that people can meet each other. And also, I mean, again, I have these grand plans, because what I would love to do is to get the elderly people that participate to be able to contact others who are also participating, and basically create a community within these households. So basically first form small little families, new nuclear families from strangers, and then take those strangers and create a greater community of people that have so much in common.
Fantastic. We are all, every one of us, going to be old someday. They're just like us, but older. It's true. I like the idea they had in the Netherlands, where young people received subsidized housing in a development where older people lived also alongside them. They had to dedicate a certain amount of their time to spend with elders, just talking or going shopping. I'm sure that becomes less formal and more sort of natural after a while. I suspect the homeowner and their mate. Yes. Lizanne, we would all want to be treated with respect and care. Think about that, says Lizanne. Colin is here as well this morning. Good morning, Colin. So many old people have such interesting stories that no one asked them about. This information is lost to future generations. Colin, You know me here. If there's ever an elder who wants to tell their fascinating story, they are welcome. They have the key to the studio. Let them know that. How do you do the candidates recruitment to the program? So we've covered that. What a great idea. We're catching up with comments from ages ago here, Joyce. I meant wealth of knowledge. Henrik, thank you for your comment. Taryn, thank you for yours. Men would die a lot earlier if they didn't have us women looking out for them. I'm sure of it.
That is true. That's sad, but it's actually true. You know, there's studies that have demonstrated that married women, okay, women live longer than men. This is true. Women live longer than men, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Single women live longer than married women. Married men, single women live longer than married women.
Yeah.
Married men live longer than single men.
Yes.
So basically, men benefit from being married more than women do.
All right. I feel a bit bad about that. I'm going to move on.
Well, don't feel bad. Do something about it. I'm sure the missus would appreciate it.
What? Listen to her more. Okay. All right, Joyce and everyone. I'll move in. I think this is to the 40 Tower style elder home that we're going to have one day. Bon dia, tuned in late. So interesting. We'll have to recap later. Do, Susan. It's very, very worthwhile. Even if I say so myself, it's been brilliant this morning. Bon dia, checking in late from New Orleans this morning from John.
Oh,
Hi, John.
wow.
Yeah. Do you have a larger percentage of people needing places or having spaces available? Yeah, that's an interesting and quickie question there.
So for every application of an older person, we have between 12 to 15 of younger.
Do you? Fascinating.
Which is good because it means that we can basically pick the ones with the best quality, and it means that it's easier to find a correspondence, because what we're really trying to do here is help the elderly people, and then helping the other person find a home. It's just collateral. It's just basically collateral benefit of the situation.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important. This is also partly why I'm so happy to be here today, because we need to spread the word, because social media only goes so far to reach the elders. It will if their children and grandchildren see it and then share it with them. Because they will see it, and I've signed up for groups within Facebook, which are like, they're working with gerontology or universities of third age, those sorts of things. Yes. They're all very protective when it comes to advertising, so it's always a bit like, oh, this is advertising, sorry, you can't do it. I was like, oh. So you have to, there's time and investment into it, but that's why it's important to get to the older people. So if you know anyone who is in this situation who could use help, and has an empty room at home, please put them in touch with us, contact us, and let us know. And you can always go to the website. If you send us through the contact section, I'm mostly the one who checks those. So please do that. If you want to offer help, in a way that I haven't mentioned, but you have some ideas on how you can help, yes, Fritz, you can. Oh, Fritz, yeah, on the website. Yes.
This is a really good way of opportunity to something. Absolutely.
So if you don't have time, but you have a little bit of money, that would be amazing. And if you don't, but if you have other ideas, you can help by spreading the word. If there's any lawyers, if you know your local authorities, if you can introduce me to someone, if you can say, look, I've seen this and it's amazing, go and check it out. This should be public policy, because that's the reason why things haven't changed. And the offers, the options that we have right now are the same options we had 50 years ago when we age, and that's just not right. And the reason why it's that way is because politics and policy, they remain the same. And so we really need things to be transformed. And we've had some countries that, let's try this out, let's do a pilot something or another. And the pilot something or another works amazingly well. But then to go from this pilot project into making it policy, it's a massive step. And politics, especially this year in Portugal, in October, we're going to have local elections. And politicians are really afraid of introducing new ideas when there's local elections, because even if they think it's a good idea, they're going to go, oh, but what is the opposition going to think? And could this become my weak point where I don't make it because they're going to shoot me down over it, and they're going to find something, there's an issue with it. And then we also tend to be risk adverse. So we're afraid of taking risks, even though we see that the benefits, it's like we either stay the way we are, which is not great, or we do this something that is amazing and can be transformative in a positive way. But there's a tiny little chance that things won't go well for a small percentage of, and then people go, oh, let's not do it. Let's not take chances. And I'm here to say, let's take chances. It can't get any worse than it is at the moment. So, this is not the future I want for myself.
Here's a message to politicians, right? Your social capital is not good at the moment. Looking at the news of the last couple of days, you might as well just go all out and do something amazing for the societies you work in, because people don't think a great deal of you at the moment. So why not man up and get inspired and share some good ideas and see if people will back you on that. Would be my message. Like you say, Joyce, it can't get a lot worse. So like, step up, step into it, and get make something awesome happen, and then you'll definitely get a street named after you or a statue one day. Bom dia, Joyce. How is the balance between Portuguese and expats on both sides who rely on your services? You said a little bit about that, didn't you? But you are reaching out more to expats in the Algarve.
So with the expats, I've just the website was recently translated, so it's only been 2 or 3 weeks since the website. I think it was when I contacted you, Carl, when I mentioned the project to you, because I was like, okay, now it's in English, and now I can get it out there to the English media. So it's not out there. I mean, I have been contacted by expats who want to know more about it, but it's a process. I'm not going to have someone who hears about it today and sign up tomorrow. That's not going to happen. Yeah. So,
okay, fair enough. And have you been in the Algarve resident and the Portugal resident?
I've sent out basically press releases to most of the papers. I know that the Portugal News wants to do something. They want to interview me.
All right.
But not. I don't know, because sometimes if they publish the press release, they won't tell me. So I've had people call me and say, "Oh, I saw it on this newspaper," and I was like, "Oh, I guess I have to." Send them a press release. So if they tell me that they've sent something out, I'll know, but otherwise I won't.
Okay, I'm aware that I'm not going to get through all the comments, but I still thank you for them anyway. Some of them are things that we have addressed earlier on in the show. And yes, Mrs. M wants to interview you. Okay, so you've got another interview lined up with
amazing. Thank you.
That's already.
Send me a message through the website.
Will do. So these are the important things to get over in this last couple of minutes that we're going to have now. Here's the website address. Go to the website. Actually, no, that's not the web. That is one of the website addresses, but I'm going to do it more simply than that. And make sure, hit on the donate button, because that all helps. And then anything else, to do with some of the other legal requests or sharing the idea around, you know what to do this morning. So there is the website. Last word to you then, Joyce.
Thank you so much. This is not something I can do on my own. It's sometimes, I wake up in the morning, or I try to, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm thinking, God, did I bite more than I can chew again? So if you can help in any way to get the word out, to do, if there's any way, again, legal help, money, we love money. We don't love money, we need money. We really do, to get the word out. If you know anyone, for example, there's a lot of companies these days who have a social responsibility arm, where they try to do something back to community. We've had such a company here in the Algarve, where they are printing some flyers for us, because we figure that if we hand out flyers and we distribute them in churches and in certain places, like health centers and places where people will be, where the older people, then we can get to them directly. Yeah. Although we also know that elderly people, they're much more likely to trust something new if it comes from a loved one.
Yes.
So
yes.
We really, basically, our marketing strategy is just try to go everywhere and try to reach as many people as possible. And if you can help with that, that would be amazing.
Joyce Craveiro of Lar, thank you so much for being here this morning with your beautiful.
Thank you, Carl.
All the best with it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.